All right, joining us now live, Cairo, Egypt, Eddie Yeranian, our man on the scene in the Middle East. He's also a correspondent for CBS Radio, and he is part of the large sprawling team of Voice of America. Eddie, happy Thanksgiving. Good to have you.
Thank you for having me, John. We had a little bit of a subdued Thanksgiving here because there was no turkey for the celebration, unfortunately. My colleague used to bring one in, but she's gone back to Washington.
Oh, well, that's too bad. So you're there by yourself. Now, I want to get to the current Turkish regime over the weekend arresting one BBC correspondent and one Voice of America correspondent for nothing other than, I understand, they didn't like the way they were covering the news. What were they arrested for? What were the charges?
To be perfectly frank with you, I haven't asked my colleague, but they've been making accusations against a lot of journalists. In fact, another colleague, and this is, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but there were suspicions that they had arranged accidents, the Turkish intelligence, down in the south of the country near the Syrian border, when they didn't like what people were saying, correspondents were saying. And I suspect it's tagged to the general issue of the crackdown on opposition to President Erdogan and his attacks against the Kurds. That is to say, he's put the Kurdish leader, that is to say the political leader, under accusations. He's had his parliamentary immunity lifted. So there is a distinct movement there towards dictatorship, if you want to call it that, if it hadn't been there already. I mean, but in any case, it's getting worse, and the media is, by reporting on all of these things, is drawing his attention and his wrath.
Let me just ask you this straight out, Eddie Yeranian, live in Cairo, Egypt. Ed, what is President Erdogan's endgame here?
Well, it's long been rumored, given that he represents an Islamist party, that he has ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, has ties to the Qataris, the Saudis, whatever pro-Islamist group that's around, former President Morsi here in Egypt, that he has intentions of restoring, or would like to restore, the old Ottoman Empire. He said very recently that it was a great tragedy that the Ottoman Empire's borders were changed by the Treaty of Lausanne. I guess it was Lausanne back in 1923. He's claimed that Turkey has some rights in the north of Iraq, in Mosul, claimed that they should have part of Aleppo and parts of northern Syria. His forces are present both in northern Syria and in northern Iraq. He clearly has designs on other people's territories, and he clearly would like to declare himself something more than what he originally was, which was the prime minister. He's already moved up to being president, so I guess it's not unimaginable that he could declare himself sultan, although I don't think there are a lot of sultans left on this earth other than in Oman and Brunei.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't think he's going to do that. What is the opinion of the Erdogan regime, let's call it that, the regime now in Turkey? They see any change in their relations with the U.S. with a President Trump than they did with Obama?
Well, quite clearly, Mr. Erdogan has been looking for other allies. He's been cultivating Russian President Putin, although I don't think they have very much in common, other than perhaps a little bit of an authoritarian streak. and I don't think they share the same interests. So while the Turkish president has been making a show of trying to bring about a rapprochement with Russia, I think it's not going to happen. Also, he's sent his foreign minister to Iran, to Tehran, and yet in this morning's Al Hayat newspaper, there are suggestions that Turkey bombed two Syrian government-held towns and an Iranian military compound in the north of Syria, which could very well ignite a much broader conflict in Syria than already exists.
Eddie, let's get to Egypt and the situation there. Reaction of the Egyptian government to President-elect Trump.
Well, Egyptian President Sisi, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, was one of the first to congratulate President-elect Trump. He met with President-elect Trump back in September on the outskirts or on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly meetings. He also met with former Secretary of State Clinton, but the Egyptian media pointed out that he hit it off with Trump and not with Secretary Clinton. So I think the relations there are fairly good. The Egyptian media has been putting a positive spin on President-elect Trump's victory. As far as the population goes, I don't think you can clearly say in one direction or the other whether people are more positive or negative about it. But certainly you can say that the Christians support President-elect Trump more than the Muslims do. Okay,
that makes a lot of sense, obviously, for much of the narrative that went on in the campaign. So sounds like we look forward to good relations there. Let's move, if we can, Edward, let's move to the Saudis, right? They have a little bit of a different game now with President-elect Trump, right? Because one of the things he said is he's going to start holding them accountable where previous administrations have not, accountable to what terrorists they might or might not be harboring, where funding is coming from. We basically prop up their military. Meantime, they've got billions and billions of dollars in oil. Trump also is going to be looking to dramatically expand U.S. energy production internally to get us off of buying from OPEC. How do you think the Saudis are reacting to Trump?
Well, I think the Saudis are worried about where things are going in their relationship with the U.S. anyway. I think they were on edge. They preferred Secretary Clinton to win, but have been making sour noises about the relationship with the United States in general. They're in trouble because their forces are bogged down in Yemen. That conflict is going nowhere. The Iranians have given ballistic missiles, various sorts of missiles to the Yemeni forces, former President Abdullah Saleh and the Houthis. And they've been firing them occasionally into Saudi Arabia. One hit outside of Mecca, and you can just imagine what would happen if that actually did hit inside Mecca. So there is a very serious geopolitical problem there. The Iranians have said they want to set up military bases or might want to set up military bases in both Yemen and Syria. Syria is not a surprise, but Yemen, of course, that would rub the Saudis the wrong way. They're spending billions of dollars every month to prop up this war that they're running inside of Yemen. So that alone is a problem. And of course, the WikiLeaks email that in which Mrs. Clinton accuses Saudi Arabia and Qatar of backing the Islamic State group, I think that says a lot there.
Right.
She forgot to mention Turkey, but of course, the Turkish media itself accused Turkey of supporting the Islamic State. So I don't think we have a secret there. So we know the three supporters of the Islamic State, the Turks, the Saudis, and the Qataris. So,
right.
I mean, you'll have to ask yourself what conclusions we can draw from that. Certainly not good conclusions. Former Saudi intelligence chief Prince Bandar was removed as intelligence chief, allegedly for supporting these radical Islamic groups. At the time, we didn't mention Islamic State, but of course now the pieces sort of fall in place. And you have to ask yourself, there are accusations out there that he had relations with the people or had been funding people involved in the September 11th 9/11 attacks in the U.S. He was immediately withdrawn as U.S. Saudi ambassador to the U.S. by King Abdullah. So you have to ask yourself what game they're playing. Are our relations going to change now that we know what games they're playing? Should they change? And of course, there seems to be some sort of balancing act going on between Saudi Arabia and Iran now that we've cut a deal with that nuclear deal with Iran.
Iran, right. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, I got a couple more minutes, Edward. I want to get to the South Korean situation. Embattled South Korean President Park Geun-hye now tells the National Assembly there that it's in their hands, that she'll step down if they want to go forward with removing her for office. As you know, President Park of South Korea, the first woman president of South Korea, also now embroiled in this scandal. She's also, for people that don't know, the daughter of military dictator Park Chung-hee. You might remember him, that those are a little bit older. He ruled pretty much with an iron fist in the 60s and the 70s in South Korea. He was a dictator for all intents and purposes. President Park under intense pressure to step down due to this financial scandal. Some people saying she profited illegally, broke the law, coercion, things of that nature. What happens there?
Well, some of the analysts are saying that it was a wise move to appeal to the National Assembly. She said basically she's placed her fate in their hands. And perhaps, according to the analysts, she's hoping that they'll be divided over what to do, and simply they will lessen her term from 5 years to 4 years rather than impeaching her. I guess that's the most positive scenario from her point of view. Other than that, the people that are demonstrating have said they were going to continue to demonstrate, and they were going to go out into the streets again on Saturday. So no sense that the popular pressure is going to lessen. And I was talking to a Korean friend, and he joked that, of course, she learned all of this from her father, who was the Korean dictator for, 15, 20 years. Back in the
I think about
70s.
17 or 18, he certainly ruled an iron fist. Eddie, we're out of time. Great update from the Middle East, from Cairo, Egypt Live. Eddie Yeranian, CBS Radio, Voice of America, and the John Fredericks Radio Network. Ed, happy Thanksgiving, belated. Sorry you didn't get the bird. We'll try to give you one when you get back to the States, all right?
Thank you, John.
All right, Eddie Yeranian.